Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Wax and Lyrical with Mainz and Dutts. I'm your host, Mainz, and my colleague, hoping you can survive 2 podcasts in a week. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
How much about old bean? How's yourself?
Yeah, 2 weeks as we prepare ourselves for the NFL schedule. 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah. Gases,
yeah. And somehow our fiancés have allowed us to do this without getting extremely mad. I'm assuming he got partially mad. Yeah, she just turned around and gave me that devil look.
Well, you asked the question, mate.
Exactly, I did ask the question, Dutton, as she says all the time. Dutton, we're going swiftly on. We're halfway through our divisional previews, and today we're talking AFC South. And we thought, who should we get to help us talk AFC South? We got Raymond Summerlin. He's resident Titans fan, and he's going to help us dissect the AFC South after we've given our 2 penneth worth, so to speak.
Titans fan and a Villa fan.
5 years from Europe, getting beat by Luton in the EFL, which wasn't a trophy about a week ago.
Yeah, I'm not too fond of that myself.
You see, but at least my understanding as where Dutton's team got beat by Cambridge, your team didn't play any of their first team where Villa did.
That may be correct.
You don't know. You didn't pay no attention to it whatsoever.
No, I wasn't paying attention. I was busy.
But Dutton, do you know why you didn't pay any attention? Because you were too busy signing up for DraftKings' £40,000 fantasy football contest. All you need to do is access our Twitter account at waxing_lyrical and click on the link for a chance to win £40,000. All you do is sign up for a DraftKings account and be sure to opt in to receive email communications. Within 24 hours, you will receive an email with a link to claim the offer. Use your free bonus to enter the £40,000 fantasy football kickoff special. Select your starting 8 for the opening day matches and follow all the action on draftkings.co.uk or on your mobile app and collect your winnings after the last match.
Seamless link.
I would like to state for the record that was not even a setup. I just did that on the fly because I'm getting C- at this. So let's get on with it. And let's get on with the AFC South. And let's start with everybody's favourite team in Houston, the Houston Texans. Question for you, Dutton, is Brock Osweiler the quarterback the Texans and Bill O'Brien have been looking for?
It's hard to say that. Well, put this way, I don't think you'll find a more highly paid question mark in the whole NFL. In that he got serious starter money for 7 pretty ordinary games. Now, they had a starter who was pretty ordinary and wasn't costing them the amount of money that Brock Osweiler's going to. So, if he's the same as Brian Hoyer, then literally it is just a case of this team just didn't want Brian Hoyer around the building anymore, sitting there all bald, stinking the place out in playoff games. It's an awful lot of money to pay for someone to come in and manage the offense, but if he can come in and manage it and not, similar to what we talked about with Jay Cutler, if he isn't the reason they lose games, then it's a position they don't have to worry about for 3 or 4 years.
I think it's 16 million guaranteed, Dutton, maybe more. It's a lot of money for someone who, as you said, had 7 average games. Although the narrative on Brock Osweiler has gone up and down. He came in, he did well, he managed the offense, and then why did he get dropped back for Peyton Manning? And then you're in that situation of okay, he got dropped, and then you look and you're like, oh well, he got dropped because he wasn't very good, and then he gets a load of money. And you're like, well, should he got a load of money? Have Denver let him go? Have Houston overpaid? I think the question is, we'll find out. He's got the weapons in place as a wide receiver to help him out, so we'll see how it goes. I think that's, for me, Bill O'Brien seems to know offense. If anyone can get the best out of Brock Osweiler, it'll be someone like Bill O'Brien.
Bill O'Brien got production out of Christian Hackenberg.
I don't think we need to say any more on that one.
The one thing that does worry me slightly about Osweiler, and this is the latest revelation, I think it's quite clear that Osweiler and John Elway ain't going to be friends. But Elway came out and said that he was surprised with how Osweiler reacted to being benched for Peyton Manning. So I think we can infer from that literally Osweiler probably, quite rightly, may have pointed out to the coaching staff and front office, you're taking me out of the lineup for someone who can't throw the ball anymore. So the implication is that overconfidence, or is it unjustified arrogance when, you may be lighter on your feet than Peyton Manning, you may throw less touchdowns, but you can't read the game the way Peyton Manning does.
I think, as you said, I don't think we're going to have many kind words or shared stories around the campfire between John Elway and Brock Osweiler.
They ain't getting together over a Papa John's at any point.
They're not. Over under for the Houston Texans is I think quite a big 8.5. Road games, which are really difficult for me. Pats, Vikings, Broncos, Raiders and Packers. Home games against the Bears, the Chiefs, the Lions, the Chargers and the Bengals. 8.5, Dutton, what say you?
I'm going to say over. I'm not going to say massively over, but I think this is a 9-10 win team. It does, of course, an awful lot does hinge on whether they get a certain defensive player back. But yeah, I think that's a nice number. I think just over for me.
I'm going under, Dutton. I look at that road schedule. Pats, Vikings, Broncos, Raiders and Packers. That's the two best teams in the NFC North, the best team in the AFC, the best defence in the AFC, and the up-and-coming team of the AFC, the Raiders. I don't see them winning a single one of those games. They play Indy twice. I expect them to be better. And, insert hype train gif in relation to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think they're a 7-9 team at best. So I'm going to go under. Fantasy stud, Dutton, it best be DeAndre Hopkins.
It isn't.
Whoa, tell me who it is.
It's Lamar Miller. I think we saw in Miami that he can be incredibly productive with less than a full workload. The Houston Texans run the second or third most plays per game in the league. Certainly the last few years, that's behind the Chip Kelly Eagles and I believe the Giants. So the opportunity is there. They want to run the ball. They've shown over the years that is their raison d'etre. He's going to be involved in the passing game. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be a wide receiver one. He's going to be that productive. But I worry about Brock Osweiler. It's not a question that there's Will Fuller there now. There's Jalen Strong. There's Braxton Miller. No. We've seen that DeAndre Hopkins can be quarterback proof. I generally think Brock Osweiler could be so bad he drags him back down with him. So DeAndre Hopkins, much like Andre Johnson in the past, is not a huge scorer of touchdowns. So that does cap his value a bit. Whereas Lamar Miller, I think, you look at his competition, all your touchdowns belong to Miller.
Fantasy dud, Dutton.
Fantasy dud, I'm not going to name names. I'm going to throw them all into it. Any Houston Texans tight end. So that's CJ Fedorowicz. That's Steven Anderson, the undrafted rookie. It's, what's his name, Brian Griffin. Much like Chan Gailey, Bruce Arians, Bill O'Brien doesn't use the tight end, which is odd because he's come from New England and they've had quite good tight ends over the past few years. While he's been there, the tight end one has seen a barely credible 5% of total team targets in 2 seasons. So they haven't really got any stars there. Their best tight end, you can argue, under Bill O'Brien has been J.J. Watt. So this is not a position to look at and think, ooh, sleepers. No, they're asleep.
Houston Texans, over-unders 8.5. Don't think they're over, although doesn't like Brock Osweiler, so he's a bit of a bit come-see, come-sat on that. I'm under. It's a tremendously tough out-of-division road schedule for me, and I think there's a chance he might go 0-5. Fantasy stud is not DeAndre Hopkins. It's Lamar Miller. Dutton sees the touchdowns going to Miller, although he's not saying don't pick DeAndre Hopkins, he's just saying you might get more points with Miller. And the fancy dud is anyone from the tight end. And Dutton named 3 lads who I'm pretty sure were extras in Friends in 2004. Next on the list, Dutton, is the Indianapolis Colts. And the question I've got on the Indianapolis Colts is pretty simple. Was last year a blip? It
can either be seen as a blip or an imperfect storm. in that they, as fans of Washington and the Eagles, we can attest, big name free agent signings do not a season make. They went out and brought in Andre Johnson, Frank Gore, Trent Cole, Todd Hermans. These are all good, solid pros, borderline Hall of Famers in Gore and Johnson's case. But they were done. They were spent. They wasted an awful lot of money and then went out and drafted the shiny thing in the draft instead of addressing needs on the defense or offensive line. Now, they've done it this year, but they're a confusing team. It seems to be there's no real cohesion at the top. Jim Irsay is going to interfere. It's his team. He spends the money. He can do what he wants, I suppose. Ryan Grigson, who won Executive of the Year a couple of years ago because he drafted Andrew Luck. Well done there. Chuck Pagano, who a defensive coach, has had some horrible defenses while he's been in Indy. It's not that good a roster. Andrew Luck papered over an awful lot of cracks in 2014. Then he got cracked himself. I expect this team to be better, but I don't think they're going to be a dominant force this year.
I looked up and I think it was all on Andrew Luck when they were good. It was on Andrew Luck when they were bad. How is Andrew Luck when he gets back? There's multiple Andrew Luck narratives going on at the moment around whether he is good or not as good as people said, or he's better than people think, and blah blah blah. You've seen them all. He's a tremendously talented player. He probably throws a few too many interceptions, and he also gets beaten up because his offensive line's been rubbish. Ryan Kelly, the Alabama center, is perfect for that. So I think Luck is back to 2014 form, and the Colts are back in the driving seat for this division.
Is that an indication that they've improved, or the division hasn't improved, and that they can just pick it up?
I think the division is better, and we'll get onto that with the next two teams. The Vegas line is 9.5, so they tend to agree with me. Road games against the Broncos, the Packers, the Jets, the Vikings, and the Raiders, equally as tough as Houston's. Home games against the Lions, the Chargers, the Bears, the Chiefs, and the Steelers, 9.5 done.
Under.
A lot? A little?
Again, a little. That's a tough road schedule. The home schedule is more forgiving, and generally they have been good at home under Pagano and Luck. But I just don't think it's a very good team. And as much as I love Andrew Luck, and I do, as an Arsenal fan, so I think love might be a bit harsh, a bit far rather. I just think they're very, very weak in a lot of positions. And they can put up fantasy numbers, that's great, but you're going to have to put up a lot of numbers if you're going to be behind, and they're going to be behind because this defence is terrible. So, no, I see them, 500, maybe a tick above, but no, I'm not a Colts believer this year.
I tend to be with you, don't I? Look at the division and think that this is a 9-7 team, maybe 8-8. So the thought that I can't see them going 11-5, 10-6 personally. I think the issue is, it's good, but it's not right. And I just look on the road: Broncos, Packers, Jets, Vikings, Raiders. As we said, that's a really, really tough schedule. So I'm going to go with the under as well. Next on fantasy stud, who is it for the Indianapolis Colts?
Well, the assumption is that it's going to be Andrew Luck. He's going to come back in. He's going to pick up where he's left off. He's going to put up numbers. He's going to have the volume, as I don't envision this team is going to be able to run the ball effectively. They still only really have Frank Gore at running back. A lot of hype about Josh Ferguson. There was hype last year about Josh Robinson, and he fell away pretty quickly. So Andrew Luck is an obvious, It's quite strange, really. You'd expect maybe after the down year he had that his ADP would drop, but he's still up there, like the fourth tight end coming off the board. So obviously team players have a lot of faith in Luck. Luck is the obvious one. I think T.Y. Hilton is going to get his. He's much better with Luck than without. And if I just made with one of my favourite sleepers, and he is a sleeper based on his ADP, Dwayne Allen, doesn't have Kobe Fleener to worry about anymore, is going to be on the field a lot more. I think he was just on about 50% of the snaps last year. He's going to see a lot more playing time, and he's a red zone monster. I think he's got 9 receptions from 9 touchdowns from 14 red zone receptions in his career. So I think they will be numbers here, but I just think as a team they'll be garbage.
Fantasy dud.
Fantasy dud's Philip Dorsett. I don't think Andrew Luck has shown us that he can prop up 2 fantasy-relevant wide receivers over the course of a season. T.Y. Hilton, as we said, is going to get his. A lot of people are expecting Dante Moncrief to break out. They've got Dwayne Allen, as I say. Where's Philip Dorsett come into this? He's pretty similar to T.Y. Hilton, so I think he needs an injury to get into the rotation. Rob Chudzinski, not a big user of the third wide receiver. He prefers using the tight end. So I just think it's a numbers game. I think he misses out this year.
Recap on the Indianapolis Colts. Vegas say 9.5. Me and Dutton say that's pricey. We're going to go under. We're not as convinced by this team as it seems that Vegas are, and we're not convinced by the squad overall, though we do both like Andrew Luck. Fancy stud is said quarterback. We expect a bounce back here, and we expect him to throw for a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. If you want a tight end and you can't get Gronk, maybe Dwayne Allen's an offer, because he hasn't got Kobe Fleener in his way this year. Fancy dud is Philip Dorsett. Too many mouths to feed, and we think this is the guy who goes hungry. Next team, Dutton, is the Jacksonville Jaguars, or the London Jaguars, or whatever we're going to call them. The question I have for you, Dutton, as King Fantasy Man, is: are the Jaguars a fantasy player's wet dream?
It depends how good you think their defense is going to be. If it's improved, we have players, like Dante Fowler coming back, Miles Jack, Jalen Ramsey. They won't have to be a fantasy player's wet dream, as you so eloquently put it.
Thank you.
If the defense is still garbage, then yeah, we can look at this. This team is similar to the Colts. They've got a gunslinging quarterback. They've got talented wide receivers. They've got a tight end who makes his money in the red zone. It really is a question: has Gus Bradley finally got the personnel to run the scheme he was brought in to run and make this team a defensive juggernaut that it was in the early parts of the 21st century?
For the new people to NFL, the Jacksonville Jaguars used to be a defensive team under Jack Del Rio. I know you don't believe that, but it's true. And yes, Jack Del Rio used to be the coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I like this team, and I like the offense, and I hope it improves. I hope this team is good this year. That's going to be my only real thought on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I like the team. I like the structure. I want them to be good. The owners allowed this to ferment and happen, so let's hope it works. Vegas are not as convinced. They're saying the over-under is 7.5. They have road games against the Chargers, the Bears, the Chiefs, the Lions, and the Bills, and home games against the Packers, the Ravens, the Raiders, the Broncos, and the Vikings. 7.5 done.
Over.
By much. If you're not unsure of the sounds, Dutton's got his thinking face on, which means he looks like he's doing a poo.
Thanks for that. This team's going at least 8-8, and as a callback to a previous show, you can put it on the board.
I'm with you, Dutton. I think this team has a chance to win this division at 9-7. If all things go well, I think they're a 9-7 team. For me, the 7-9 to 9-7, a couple of things go their way, more on the division games, and they've got a chance to be 9-7, but I would definitely pick the over here. And I think, as I said, insert gif of hype train.
Oh, we're on board. First class, we're on board. Dutton, Jacksonville Jaguars, who is their fantasy stud? Well, the fantasy stud is still Allen Robinson for me. Obviously, it's highly unlikely he'll get 14 touchdowns again, but he's still going to be the main receiver. Even if they do run the ball more with Chris Ivory and TJ Yeldon, statistics have shown that when teams have been pass happy, when they dial it back, the main receiver still sees a high proportion of their targets. They don't all of a sudden go, we're going to pass less, so let's spread it around more. They still know that Allen Robinson's the guy, so they're going to feed him. He's, I say, he scored an obscene number of touchdowns. He's not going to be as good in the red zone as Julius Thomas. As I say, they're going to run the ball in the red zone with Chris Ivory, and please God, let's forget that they've tried to run the ball in from the 1 yard line at Wembley with Toby Gerhardt 4 times in a row. Let's forget that ever happened, please, because I still wake up in cold sweats. That's what you gave this country, NFL. You gave us that vision. Screw you. But yeah, Robinson, for where he's going at that, top of the second round, so he's in that. If you're taking the zero running back and you're going wide receiver heavy, he's in that second tier after the top notch guys have gone. But he could easily finish in the top 10, top 8.
I just wanted that Dean screen button that they've got on around the NFL when he did that screw you, NFL, screw you.
I love that, bro.
Fantasy dud done. Fantasy
dud is his mate from the 2014 draft, Marquise Lee. As I said on my column on NFL Girl UK, the stayaways, if the Jaguars could convince the world that they took Alan Hearns in the second round and Marquise Lee was the undrafted free agent, then we'll let them go. We'll let them off with this. Lee has struggled to stay fit. He's not really been the same since that one great college year he had. We're spotting a theme here. He's a USC receiver, but yeah. And he's behind Robinson, he's behind Hearns, he's behind Rashard Matthews, he's certainly behind Julius Thomas, and they do want to run the ball more. So thanks a lot, Marquise. It's been emotional.
Get on board the waxing Lyrical Jacksonville Jaguar hype train. Tickets still available for first class, and also obviously lots of seats available in standard. Dutton and I both think they're going over, minimum 9-7. We think they're going to win the division. Fantasy stud is Allen Robinson. Dutton and Matt Harmon are right on board. They're leaders in the Allen Robinson fan club, and they're not stopping now. Dutton also likes Chris Ivory this year to steal a lot of touchdowns from the 1 yard line, as long as it's not in London. Fantasy dud is Marquise Lee. As we all know, Dutton hates USC and everything to do with their wide receivers, and that's why we haven't had Marcus Grant on for a while, because they're having a falling out over said situation. Don't pick Marquise Lee. There's too many mouths to feed and he isn't on the list. Final team, Dutton. It's exotic smash mouth itself. It's the Tennessee Titans. And my question really is on the Tennessee Titans is, can exotic smash mouth be anything other than a joke?
No. The head coach is an idiot. I don't get this. This crap that they're going through of calling out their talented players instead of devising ways to feature their strengths. He called out Kendall Wright as well, saying he was taking an awful long time to recover from his injury, and then he had an MRI and saw that he had fluid on the injury. So screw you, Malarkey. You are not Bill Parcells. Your motivational skills are absolutely lacking, because who the hell are you to think these players are going to think so much of you to say, I'll prove him wrong? They don't care. You're a buffoon, man.
I don't know how he got the job. I really don't. I'm completely bamboozled by how it happened.
Because they quit on him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They quit on him last year and somehow he got the job. I don't know why. Maybe the new GM couldn't get one. He's sorted now. He'll sack him at the end of the year because this team isn't very good.
That's an idiot.
Vegas lined up in his 5.5.
Under.
Road games: Lions, Dolphins, Chargers, Bears and Chiefs. Home games against Vikings, Raiders, Browns, Packers and Broncos. It's under. It's look at that. Look at the home schedule: Vikings, Raiders, Packers, Broncos. They're losing all 4 of them. They'll lose to the Chargers, to the Lions, to the Chiefs at least. They won't win many games on. They won't win many games in division and with you. These could be picking in the top 3 this year.
Yeah, easily this is a 3-win team. But to be honest, they've made it perfectly clear that that's what they expect to be with this coaching hire.
Fantasy stud, Dutton.
The fantasy stud, it's very hard to say. I mean, an awful lot of people are high still on Delaney Walker after last year. Delaney Walker saw 25% of total team targets, which for a tight end is absolutely obscene. I generally don't get the hype this year. They want to run the ball more with this exotic smashmouth crap, as we put it. It's the stud is pushed to the limit here because I am a fan of him. It's Marcus Mariota, where you can get him so low, quarterback 23, 24. He's got upside if he's going to run more, which, that would be exotic. So if he can get the carries, we talked about this with Tyrod Taylor, it's, 4 points for a passing touchdown, well, that's 40 yards. He can rush for 40 yards. He had a 78-yard touchdown run last year. It's just a question of who can he get the best out of, and they just seem to be determined to put out a wide receiver core that are all yes sir, no sir, 3-bag full sir, but not very talented, which is why the likes of Dorial Green-Beckham will continue to be on the outside looking in because of some faux motivational tactic from their head coach.
Fantasy done.
DeMarco Murray. And yeah, it is personal. He's crap. He's got absolutely nothing left. He's a rotting shell that ran behind the same line that let Ryan Matthews run for 5 yards a carry last season. He's got nothing left. And plus, as I say, I don't particularly think he's a very good person to have around the locker room because he'll go cry to an owner. And let's be honest, this team's ownership structure doesn't know who's running the team anyway. So which person on the private jet is he going to piss and moan to this time? This team has really got me angry. And I've no idea why, because they're such a non-entity. But no, I mean, I think he's running back 23. Well, what's the upside in DeMarco Murray? Seriously, someone explain it to me. I don't get where you're going. Please don't draft him. If he falls, he fell to me in 2014, and I won a championship off it. Yay me! I won't make that mistake again because it's not going to work.
If you haven't noticed, me and Dutton don't like the Tennessee Titans. They're not very good, and they make us angry. The over-under's 5.5, and we are both way under. We think they're in the top 3 picks next year, probably 4 and 12, 3 and 13. Fantasy stud is Marcus Mariota. I feel sorry for him because he's on a team where the offense is going to be from the 1950s, not the 21st century. Fancy dud is DeMarco Murray, and Dutton doesn't like him. I don't know if you noticed. I thought he did pretty well, to be fair.
There's a GIF available of him running out of bounds against the Dolphins last year to avoid being tackled by a cornerback. DeMarco Murray is built like a brick crap house, and he ran out of bounds to avoid being tackled by a Dolphins cornerback. I could outmuscle the Dolphins secondary.
That's the division preview, but before we go, obviously we said we talked to Ray Sumlin. Let's hope he hasn't been listening to the last 5 minutes when we've slagged off his Tennessee Titans and will still speak to us and answer questions. And joining us now on Wax and Lyrical, it's the brilliant Raymond Summerlin. Raymond works for writer for Rotor World and Fantasy Pros. He's also an Aston Villa fan, but we won't talk about that. Why we've got him on the show is because he's a massive Tennessee Titans fan, and we're talking AFC South today, and we wanted to get him on board. Ray, how are we?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Aston Villa because that informs while I'm doing terribly the day after losing to Luton. I don't even know who they are. I've never even heard of them before. It's just a terrible, terrible time to be either an Aston Villa or Titan supporter. So I'm in a valley, as it says in my sports fandom. I can tell you that.
Right, the worst thing is as well, correct me if I'm wrong, in your MFL 10, you've also got Ladarius Green, so you seem to be setting money on fire as well.
I like Ladarius Green a lot this year. I thought that he was in a good position to take on much of the work that Martavis Bryant left on the table when he's suspended. And as it turns out, he's not in a great position because he might end up retiring. So, yeah, it's all coming up Summerlin lately, I can tell you that.
We'll get straight on with it. So we just talked through the AFC South, me and Dutton, and one of the questions we asked was in relation to the Indianapolis Colts was last year a blip, and the question we have is it just a plug in the Colts to return to the top of the pile, or is this a much more wide open division than it was in the years previous?
Well, I think that the Texans are probably a lot better team now. They're certainly much better coached, I think, under Bill O'Brien. It will all come down to Brock Osweiler, and I suppose J.J. Watt's health, but it looks like he should be good for at least week 2, week 3. So I think that the Texans are just a much better team than they were previously. The offense with Lamar Miller, even if Brock Osweiler can't be anything more than a game manager, Lamar Miller gives them a very explosive threat in the backfield. They obviously have DeAndre Hopkins, who's one of the top wide receivers in the league. And then their defense is, I think, a little quietly is amazing. Whitney Merciless had a great year last year. They have Watt. You will see what Jadeveon Clowney can do. Their cornerback duo is among the best in the league. So they have a lot of bright spots on defense. So I think that it's a lot more about the Texans and how good the Texans can be than it is with the Colts. And, the Colts with Andrew Luck, you would expect if Andrew Luck comes back in and he's Andrew Luck, which we'll see what happens there. Camp reports have been up and down with him. I think you would still expect them to win the division, but they have all sorts of questions too. So I think that you put it all together, and that's where the wide open division comes in.
If Luck were to go down again with injury, obviously last year was pretty much the first year he's been injury prone, which is obviously a horrible phrase to use and only really applies to washed out old farts like myself. Would that be curtains for every other Colts player in fantasy after we saw what happened last year with the revolving door at quarterback? Or would there be some lone spark still there?
Well, I think that last year was a bad situation because of who they had behind him. I mean, Matt Hasselbeck was obviously well respected, but he was just past it. And then after they got behind him, there aren't that many good quarterbacks just laying around. So they bring in, Josh Freeman of all people to play, and that's not going to go well. So I think that their backup situation last year was pretty poor. They took steps to address it this offseason. They brought in Scott Tolzien from Green Bay, who is at the very least a solid backup. Obviously, he's not Andrew Luck, and so you would see a downturn in the offense. But it's not going to be like when Hasselbeck was playing last year, and defenses basically knew he wasn't throwing more than 10 yards downfield, which obviously limits what T.Y. Hilton can do because that's obviously where he likes to work. And it also puts a lot of men in the box that Frank Gore has to deal with. Frank Gore averaged, I believe, 3.3 yards per carry without Andrew Luck last year and 4.1 with Andrew Luck. That's a significant difference that is not just a matter of chance. So when you look at the offense, I think Scott Tolzien would be able to come in and at least run the offense similarly to the way it's run under Luck, and that would mean the fall-off wouldn't be as great. Obviously, there would still be fall-off. He won't be Andrew Luck, but I'm not as worried about it as I was last year after Luck went down, or as I would be if they hadn't have gotten somebody like Scott Tolzien. And
sadly, we missed out on the Tolzien revenge game from Monday night.
That would have been, I mean, paint, went together to get that, so we didn't get to see that. But I think he's going to play a lot this preseason. So if you play preseason DFS, I'm not sure. DFS got to England, right? I thought that we talked about it.
It's here.
Right,
yeah,
so
we've got it.
It's not in Texas any longer, so I can't pay attention. But Tolzien might be a nice little preseason DFS play.
The thought of playing preseason DFS means you've got a problem, though.
It's a lot of fun. It is an unbelievable amount of fun to start Gus Johnson, not the announcer Gus Johnson, an actual running back named Gus Johnson. Start him in your league and win some money. It's a fantastic feeling.
You mentioned the Texans and you seem pretty high in them. I guess the question is, are you high in them because you believe that Brock Osweiler is going to be an upgrade on Brian Hoyer?
Not necessarily. I don't think he needs to be. I don't think that that's the way they want to run their offense. Obviously, they gave him a lot of money because they think he has the upside to be that. But I wouldn't be surprised if in year one they used him more, like a game manager. And they didn't use Brian Hoyer like that at the beginning of last season, but they were able to because of how the defense played over the second half of the season to use Hoyer that way, and we saw the success that it brings. Now they have a real running back. By the time that the offense or the defense really started clicking, they were running through, Jonathan Grimes and Alfred Blue and guys like that. Now they have a real running back. I think they can lean on that. Even last year, they were pretty run heavy. I believe they had the 12th highest run percentage in the league. I assume it'll get even closer to the top five this year, probably be in the top five. So I think that they're not going to force Brock Osweiler to throw a lot. I don't think he has to. If he comes in and is, for some reason, suddenly better than the player we saw last year, I do have a lot of respect for Bill O'Brien as a coach. I saw what he did with Christian Hackenberg at Penn State. By the way, another one of the teams that I support, Penn State University. So I am toxic, as we are figuring out through the course of this podcast. But yeah, I saw what he did with Hackenberg. Made him look like a competent quarterback, which all other data points suggest that he's not. I really have a lot of respect for him as a coach, and I think that leads to me being slightly more optimistic maybe than others about what this offense can do.
So Dalton picked in his fantasy stub for the Texans. He went Lamar Miller to shock me instead of who I assumed would be DeAndre Hopkins. You're talking that you expect him to run more. They've now got that competent quarterback in Miller. Do you think Miller's a good play in fantasy this year?
Yeah, I have him as my 5th overall running back. I think that you could make an argument for him even higher than that. I think you could make an argument out of the top 5 guys, so David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, and Adrian Peterson, that he is the safest of those. He doesn't have the questions, as many of the questions. There is the problem that Miami never really utilized him despite his efficiency. He's been perhaps the most efficient per touch running back in fantasy for the last 2 or 3 years, and they never really gave him that volume. So maybe there is a concern that once he gets that volume, that'll go down. But I don't think so. I think that he is going to be a high volume running back who retains a lot of his efficiency, and that puts him in the conversation to be the number 1 overall running back. And I think that upside is real.
Mainz and I were speaking earlier about the Jacksonville Jaguars. For the 4th year at least in a row, we appear to be Team Jags in the optimism stakes. Is this the year they finally let us cash in all this optimism, or is it still is the potential for them to be the same old train wreck still there?
Well, I think that potential is always going to be there when you're the Jaguars, but you look on paper and they went and addressed the places they needed to address. On the defensive line, they ended up with Malik Jackson. They get Dante Fowler back. They have this defensive end, this 3rd-round defensive end, whose name I'm not even going to attempt to say, but I'm pretty sure his first name is Yannick. But the last one I'm not going with. But he's showing out in camp. So they really went and tried to address the pass rush. And even if you go farther down the list, they get Senderick Marks back, who had 8 sacks 2 years ago. They got a kid out of Notre Dame named Sheldon Day, who really lit up the Senior Bowl and has some really fast and powerful hands and can get up the field quickly. So they did a good job trying to address the pass rush. They obviously went and addressed the secondary with Jalen Ramsey and Prince Amukamara. They also got Deshaun Gibson in, who was one of the biggest playmakers at safety 2 years ago. I believe he led the league in interceptions 2 years ago. So you look what they did on defense, and they obviously knew where their problems were and then went and added them. And then, oh, by the way, they got maybe the best defensive player in the draft in Myles Jack in the 2nd round. So I think that they have really added to this. I don't think that, a lot of the other previous kind of hype trains with the Jaguars were maybe a little unfounded. This one, at least on paper, is not. Now, obviously, it has to all come together, and we'll see what happens. It wouldn't be the first time that the offseason champions didn't turn it into a pretty good season. But at least on paper, they did what they needed to do on defense, and that is enough to give them optimism, which I think in a division, which I think you guys correctly said is wide open. So I do believe a little bit in the Jaguars this year. I would say I'm cautiously optimistic about what they can be.
Final question before we let you go, Ray, and unfortunately it's on your Tennessee Titans.
Just don't put me through the pain.
So the question, this is, I'm a Washington fan, so I know how you feel on these kinds of situations. And the question is, people ask you what a good season is, and when you have the likes of Jim Zorn or Mike Shanahan when he wants to kill all the quarterbacks, the actual response was, I want to be really, really bad and get my coach fired. The question is, would you be happy with 3-13, number one draft pick and Malarkey gone?
Absolutely. I would be happy with one win if it meant that Marcus Mariota didn't get hurt. If we can get Marcus Mariota not hurt, DeMarco Murray traded somehow, I don't know how that's going to work, but he's owed $6.5 million guaranteed next year. So good job, team. But if he could get traded, Marcus Mariota doesn't get hurt, Mike Mularkey gets fired, and we get the number one pick, that would be a dream season for the Titans. The problem is I actually think that this team is not terrible, at least not as bad as it was last year. Their front seven on defense is legitimately good. They have two really good pass rushers in Derek Morgan and Brian Arakpo. They have Jarrell Casey, who is very underrated. They have a lot of talent on the defensive line. Their inside linebacker core is really solid. They have a good front seven. If McCourty stays healthy, Parrish Cox plays like he did on the other side at the beginning of last year, I actually think this defense could be okay. And if the defense is okay, it's going to allow them to do what they want to do on offense, which is ridiculously take the ball out of their sophomore quarterback's hand, who's supposedly the face of the franchise, and give it to an aging veteran, which I think they're going to try to do. And they might be able, again, because the defense I don't think is that bad, they might be able to do it effectively. So I actually think that this is probably a 5-win team, and that might keep Mularkey his job because, well, if he wins 5 games, I think that's more than he's won in the last 2 seasons he's been a head coach combined. So that would be a step in the right direction. So I don't really have a lot of hope that really bottom out season is coming because, like I said, I do think they have the talent. It just hasn't come together.
I mean, there is the pressure that the last head coach, Wisenhunt, was 2-0 when he had 10 months to prepare for his opposition, with the opening game of the season. So there's that. And it does sound like it would be an incredibly Titans thing to do to actually be respectable in the season when all you want them to do is mail it in.
Yeah, no, it feels like it's like how Jeff Fisher kept his job there for 4 years longer than he should have had it just by the same thing he's doing with the Rams now, just by churning out those 7-9 seasons and randomly having a 10-win season in there every now and again. So I think it could happen. I've said all off season, I think that this team is a lot better on defense than people give it credit for. And as long as you're good on defense and you have, I guess, the desire to run the football, then you can squeak out wins. And I'm literally worried that that's what's going to happen. And we're going to see another year of Mularkey, the most properly named coach in the history of coaches.
I've never really thought of the name, but you're absolutely right. Right. In previous, when the ownership slight change happened, there was rumours of them moving again from Tennessee. Is that still a thing? And is that why they kind of kept Mularkey and didn't really do much at GM and kind of had this kind of revolving nonsense going on in the front office? Or is it just that's just the way it is and they're going to be in Tennessee and they're just a debacle?
Well, I think the GM they brought in was pretty well respected, John Robinson. I actually think that was thought to be a pretty good hire. I didn't like what he did in the draft. He got a lot for the number 1 pick and then traded a lot of it back to move up and get a right tackle, which is not a good allocation of resources. But I think that he was pretty well thought of. I think what happened with Mularkey is that the ownership situation, I don't believe they were thinking about leaving Tennessee, but the ownership situation is still in flux. Amy Strunk Adams, who owns the team, doesn't have complete ownership. It's spread among some of her siblings and some of their trusts. And so the NFL does not like that. That does not meet NFL rules. And so she's having to get a bigger stake of the team. I think they're trying to work through it, and it's something that might get resolved this year, which will give them perhaps a little more freedom. But I think that maybe that played a role in Mularkey, coming back. But I just think they're not good at making decisions. And when you're not good at making decisions, you make bad decisions. And I think that that's kind of what happened.
See, the NFL doesn't like, big ownership groups and trusts, but they're quite happy when businessmen who are being investigated by the FBI want to buy the Cleveland Browns, just presumably because it's like, well, it's what the Browns would do anyway.
Well, they had to get it out of Randy Lerner's hands. As a Aston Villa fan, I can tell you that the best thing that ever happened to Cleveland is that the ownership I don't care if it's to a felon. You're still better off without Randy Lerner running your football club, as it were. So you're in better shape, I promise.
Right. Thanks a lot for your time. We apologise for, let's be brutally honest about it, depressing you for the past 20 minutes talking about somehow we talked Villa, Penn State and the Titans. We can only apologise for that. But as always, thanks for joining us, and we hope to speak again soon.
Thanks, guys. It's always fun.
Well done. That was a brilliant Raymond Summerlin there. Who we just depressed the arse off for 15 minutes.
Yeah, don't try and ring him now, as I think he'll be on to the Samaritans.
I think both of us in about half an hour should tweet him and just checking, Ray, that you're still okay.
Yeah, you okay, hon?
You okay? Please stay away from putting your toaster in the bath. Yeah, if you hear about a story of Ray Summerlin dying due to a toaster in the bath, please blame @waxing Lyrical.
Yeah, we didn't give them the toaster. We may have just given them the idea.
Yeah, exactly, Dutton, exactly. Well, that's the AFC South, Dutton. We survived our 2 weeks and on to next week, Dutton, when we will talk, obviously, NFC South and see if we can, enjoy the work of Panthers, Falcons, Saints, and Bucks.
Don't forget to keep iTunes comments. I've narrowed my choice down for the NFL book to the comment we like the best to 3 or 4. I'm not going to reveal it yet because I want to see comments.
And obviously, don't forget if you want to join DraftKings, just use our link at waxing_lyrical on Twitter.
Yeah, preseason DFS, as Ray said,
is got to be for the gambling addicts of the world. This has been Waxing Lyrical. Get used to it.